What's going on? I just finished watching Durianrider's video, Tim Sheath Failed Veganism or Veganism Failed Tim. Pretty long video, pretty recent one of him, 29 minutes. A lot of rambling, a lot of ranting as usual. He criticizes Tim for leaving the vegan bandwagon and of course throws around a lot of nonsense. But one thing that stood out to me in particular was his comments about teeth. I don't really know why he got into the teeth issue, because I think Tim Sheath didn't mention any, major teeth problems or tooth problems with tooth health, essentially. But he got into this topic and he, as usual, ranted about it with his usual arguments that you basically just have to floss teeth, you have to brush them regularly, and you should avoid a dry mouth, and then basically all your teeth are gonna be fine. And if he would only have done that in the past, then all of his teeth would be fine as well. So I just wish to comment on this here a little bit, because this is essentially misinformation, and maybe someone out there wants to get a better, understanding of the subject. Then I hopefully can provide some additional information here. Now, first of all, he's correct when he says that he had a lot of tooth problems. Do you really want to take advice from someone who does not have one single natural tooth in his mouth anymore? Because that's basically Durianrider's situation. He has only artificial teeth. He had a pretty severe jaw surgery, and along the lines, along that one, he also replaced all of his natural teeth with artificial teeth, which you can see pretty, well when you watch his videos, because these teeth are really white and they shine through kind of artificially through his mouth, I have to say. So it's kind of obvious. Do you really want to take advice from someone who has no natural tooth in his mouth anymore at an age of 42? I think the guy is 42 or 43 or something, definitely in his early 30s, in his early 40s, I mean. And we can debate whether he looks good in general for this age. I would consider not so much, actually. But it's kind of, outstanding to have not a single natural tooth anymore at 42 or 43. I mean, and this situation is already there kind of a long time. He got them replaced like 5 years ago or something, because they were so bad. His teeth were so bad. So let's get into the subject. Why do teeth actually rot, quote unquote, or why do they decay? Decay is, I think, the more precise term when it comes to this stuff. So teeth, first of all, we have to get rid of the misconception that a lot of people have in their heads that teeth basically are just dead bones sticking out of their jaws. This is not true at all. Teeth are very alive. They make the impression that they are very, not living at all, because they are very static. They don't move a lot, unlike other parts of the body, which are obviously alive and, mobile. They move around. Actually, your teeth can move around a little bit as well, because they are, fixed, they are not fixed in your jaw 100% tightly. They are fixed there with very tight collagen structures, which can move around a bit. And some people have the experience when they chew on something really hard for a long time, then they can have the impression that some of their teeth got kind of loose in the process, because they chewed on that hard stuff for so long. And this is really the case. Your teeth are, they are not 100% fixed in your jaw. And this is kind of a self-protecting mechanism, because imagine if you would bite on something that is super hard and your tooth would have no leeway whatsoever, and you would basically correct that tooth instantly. So you kind of have a little bit of leeway in there to provide a bit of cushioning, cushioning to your teeth when you bite on stuff. So that's that, first of all. Your teeth are very alive. Although they look so dead, they look basically like dead bones, they are very alive, just like your other bones in your body. They are innervated, they are vascularized with blood vessels from their roots. And as we go from the inside of the tooth, from the roots, basically more on the outsides, the vascularization and then innervation becomes less and less. And the calcification, the hardness of the tissue becomes more and more, becomes stronger and stronger, until we reach the surface of your teeth, which are coated by a substance called enamel, which is actually the hardest substance in your body because it is so damn calcified. And so this is actually pretty impressive if you think about it, that the body is able to uphold such a high calcification on the surface, basically in the air, of a tissue. Because this tissue can't be really provided with nutrients when you think about it, right? All the nutrients come from inside and they have to be delivered, they have to be carried to the outside of your tooth where they are needed the most to uphold this enamel. So when we think about the teeth, being provided with nutrients from the inside, then it only makes sense to conclude from that when they decay, probably they also decay from the inside, or in other words, something with the provision from the inside is wrong. Now, to illustrate that even more, this point, I want to also mention that there is there's very, very tiny channel-y structures also in that area of the teeth, which are not vascularized and not innervated anymore because they are so far out on the surface. And through these channels, there's actually permanently a kind of fluid running from the inside to the outside, and kind of carrying nutrients from the inside to the outside of that tooth. And this is also why if you have something sticking on your teeth, with time, this literally gets pushed off your teeth and it's getting dissolved really. And, it's also getting dissolved from the outside by your saliva. If you have healthy and high quality saliva, this is yet again something that varies quite significantly from people to people depending on their nutritive situation. But high quality saliva as well, if teeth are permanently in contact with that, of course, this saliva is literally going to pull this fluid from the inside to the outside and carry the nutrients through the teeth, and by this way ensure that your teeth stay healthy, essentially. So what can really disrupt this very fine-tuned calcification, so to say, from the inside? In order to understand this, we have to take a look at the chemical situation of the blood in a little bit more detail, because we've basically got two main moving fluids inside of our body. The first one is the blood and the second one is the lymph. We also got a third non-moving fluid inside of our body, and this is the intracellular fluid. So the other two are actually extracellular fluids, and the intracellular fluid is separated from that one. So we actually got three separated fluids, so to say, in our body. Now, the lymph is very slowly flowing and the blood is very fast flowing. Now, the flowing speed of a fluid kind of directly correlates with the neededness of the thing that they transport. Now, in the case of lymph, this is basically nutrients to cells and waste products from cells. This is what the lymph takes care of, essentially. The main task of the blood is actually almost exclusively oxygen and carbon dioxide. So the primary products of your metabolism, when you want to produce energy essentially inside of your body, you need oxygen and you create carbon dioxide, and there is a permanent exchange in your body of these two chemicals. And because this has to go really fast, remember, you can only survive without oxygen maybe like 5 minutes or something. The best people out there maybe 10 minutes, the most trained people. So this has to be exchanged rather quickly, and this is why the blood is more fast flowing, essentially. Simple as that. Now, there's also something else that the blood can carry, and this is, sugar. Sugar is also a very fast metabolite. It can be used up by your body rather quickly, and this is why blood is also very well suited to transport sugars. Now, the problem is, in order to uphold the primary task of your blood, which is the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide, the blood has to uphold a very distinct pH, meaning a very distinct acidity or alkalinity, respectively, whatever you want to call it. That's because these irony proteins that carry oxygen and carbon dioxide, the hemoglobins, on your red blood cells, essentially, they only work under very distinct pH conditions. And once this pH condition is off, you're running very quickly into problems when it comes to oxygen supply. And this is, of course, detrimental for your body. So your body attempts to keep the pH of the blood at a very distinct level all the time. Now, if you ingest a lot of sugar, for example, you are changing the osmolarity of your blood, because these molecules, these sugar molecules, they are slightly charged, and they cause the blood to behave a little differently when it comes to the osmotic relationship with the other fluids that we have in the body. And in order to buffer that out, your body has essentially one mechanism, and that is to leach calcium from the bones inside of the blood, buffering that stuff out as long as it's present. And once it goes back, once it goes down, the blood sugar goes down again, it can then redistribute that calcium back into the bones, and the problem is solved, so to say. Now, in reality, this process is a lot more complex than I described here, because there's a lot more minerals at play here. We've got a lot of minerals in the blood, and we've got a lot of nutrients in the blood, and all these things are kind of swinging up and down depending on what you're eating, depending on what you're drinking, depending on whether you're exercising or not. Are you creating a lot of lactic acid inside of your body? All these things influence the conditions, the osmotic conditions, and the pH conditions inside of your blood. And your body is very smart, it always has to keep the pH at a very constant value to ensure this oxygen supply. So it has to have a lot of tools to buffer these swings out. One of these very important tools seems to be calcium, leaching calcium from the bone inside of the blood, and once the condition resolves, redistributing that calcium to the bones. Now, while these calcium ions are in the blood, however, they get excreted via the kidneys. And if you're having a constant leaching out of your bones into the blood of calcium, because you have to buffer a lot of these swings out, and not getting enough calcium from your food back, you are with time going to piss out calcium. And this is going to, with time, run your body into the problem of decalcification. And again, because your teeth are sticking out into the air basically and are so calcified, the teeth are going to be the first ones to notice that and to suffer from that. This is why teeth can be, decaying even at a very early age, even at an age of 7 or 6 or something, when you have still your milk teeth, and when you're going to have your permanent teeth relatively soon, you can have your milk teeth rotting away out of your mouth. And obviously all the other bones of that kid are still perfectly intact, right? The kid can run around and stuff and not instantly break something. So again, the teeth are the first ones to get attacked by these swings. Now, the question here is now twofold. First of all, what foods are causing these swings? And secondly, why is there not enough calcium provided from foods to, balance these calcium losses out in the long run when you excrete calcium from your kidneys, because you have to buffer something in your blood, essentially. Now, long story short, it's carbohydrates. It seems to be carbohydrates that are the main issue when it comes to, these buffering reactions in the blood with calcium. And especially carbohydrates that are very quickly raising your blood sugar, that cause a blood sugar very rapidly to rise, essentially, because then you have to buffer it real quickly, and real rapidly. Maybe you're also a little bit insulin resistant, then these blood sugar levels stay there for a longer time, which means that you have to buffer for a longer time, which means that you're excreting more calcium over time. And that makes sense, So it's essentially a overabundance of carbohydrates in the blood, over a longer period of time, and the inability to get rid of that naturally with insulin, which is, what you should be able to do. You should get rid of your sugar in your blood quite quickly, via insulin. The reason why I think that carbohydrates are mainly at play here is that, yet again, when we take a look at indigenous people, at naturally living people who have a much lower or even sometimes zero, close to zero carbohydrate consumption, they have very, very little tooth decay. And in fact, we find a lot of skulls of, naturally living people that have still all of their teeth in them, and not a single one is attacked by tooth decay, depending on the population we're looking at. And as soon as we're taking a look at more and more civilized people, we have the introduction of grains, we have the introduction of processed grains. I mean, all of this stuff is very high in carbohydrates, and it's a very direct correlation between the carbohydrate consumption of a people and their problem with tooth decay. So it's only natural, of course, that we today have also a very big problem with tooth decay. And also back in the day, when white flour and refined sugar and all these things got introduced into our daily food, essentially, via the industry, first of all, tooth decay was rampant, okay, because people didn't know that these foods cause these reactions. They only knew that these foods taste good, so they smashed in a lot of that stuff, and of course they got problems real quickly. The same thing is true for indigenous people that got removed from their natural habitats into reservates, where they got simply fed the foods of the white man, the good tasting, sweetie stuffs, essentially, the wheat and all that kind of stuff, the grains. You can make some pretty tasty stuff with that, but you pay a high price for it. You're basically rotting your teeth away, or people say teeth are rotting away, which kind of suggests that this tooth is dead or something, which is a misnoun. I think you should call it decay, because your teeth is, as long as it's there, it is alive actually, but it is very weak when there is very little calcium supply from the inside to prevent it from decaying, essentially. Now, once it is decaying, what happens first is that on the very surface of the tooth, the enamel gets rougher, okay? So your enamel should be very, very smooth. It should be very, very hard. And there is, on a very smooth piece of enamel, it is very hard for something to stick onto, and it's also very hard for bacteria to stay on there and work on your tooth, whatever they are doing. Now, once your tooth enamel gets roughened up, because calcium basically provision is not ideal for a prolonged period of time, then you're gonna have pieces of food sticking onto this surface. Then the bacteria comes in, trying to get rid of these food pieces. Also, the tooth slowly starts decaying to the inside and leaves other things that make up the tooth on the outside. The bacteria try to get rid of that stuff, and all of this stuff results in a kind of colored coating of bacteria, and this is why these teeth basically turn black with time, and that's why people think they are rotting away. Alright, now we know the chemical mechanisms that are at play when it comes to tooth decay. Again, it's about blood sugar and trying to buffer that osmotic relationship with the rest of the body via leaching calcium out of the bones inside of the blood, and you're pissing out the calcium essentially. And the first ones are to notice that are teeth. Now the question is, what foods can really provide easily accessible calcium, easily storable calcium to replace that missing calcium essentially. And I want to mention here something as well. A tooth that got attacked once and already has a cavity, it is very, it's hard, probably impossible to restore so much calcium that this tooth substance can build up again. Once you have a cavity, you're probably gonna have it at least for life. However, you still are able to recalcify the surface of the momentarily cavity, so to say. So if your teeth surface receded a little bit, if you provide the proper calcium to your body and restore proper calcium balance inside of your body should be able to recalcify the surface and create new enamel from that, and basically stop the tooth decay from happening there. The proof that we have for this are Eskimos who have very, very strong teeth, but chew on this leather for such a long time. They make leather themselves by chewing on that stuff, and with time they literally wear off their teeth by chewing this leather, and they have little stumps only left in their mouth. So basically their teeth are reduced to half the height, but they are not hollow. They are not, of course, there's no direct connection to the pulp of the teeth, because the teeth permanently recalcified their surface, and this is what can happen in your tooth as well, if you provide the proper calcium to your body. Now, where is that calcium found? It's essentially found in milk products and seafoods, as it seems. The people who are living, the primitive peoples who are living more in the inside of a certain land, they more rely on certain milk products, it seems, and the more closer we get to the coast, it is much more efficient to rely from seafoods, essentially to rely on seafoods for that calcium supply, as it seems, when we take a look at primitive peoples. Something that has to be mentioned in this context as well is the incredible importance of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K that should go hand in hand in your diet alongside the calcium. And in order to make this possible, the products have to be raw, of course, because as we know, cooking destroys some of these vitamins, some of them quite to a significant degree, and especially vitamin D seems to be very important when it comes to the handling of calcium in general inside of the body. I discussed previously how one basic, sign of aging is actually that the body loses the ability to distribute calcium throughout it, to uphold the calcium gradients inside of the body, to keep the calcium inside of the hard tissues, inside of the bones, and away from the soft tissues like the muscles, the tendons and stuff, the joints. And what you have is essentially, as you get older, as you are losing the ability to do that, you get calcification of the soft tissues, which results in this general stiffness that older people seem to have. And at the same time, you're getting osteoporosis in your hard tissues, in your bones, because the calcium is missing there. So again, here very important, fat-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin D, to be able for your body to be able to also properly distribute that calcium throughout of its tissues. And another thing that's important when it comes to grains, especially, is the abundance of anti-nutrients, quote unquote, in these grains. There's quite a lot of substances in grains that are specifically designed to prevent you from absorbing calcium. And some of these substances are so potent that they are actually able to leach out calcium off your tissues and carry them out of your body. Okay, all these phytates, these phytic acids, and what are all oxalates and whatever they are called, there's a huge host of these substances, and probably another host of these substances we don't even know of, that are able to bind minerals to make them inaccessible for your body. And if you're getting these swings yet again without the appropriate minerals inside of the food to balance them out instantly, then your body has to basically leach minerals from itself to balance them out, and you're gonna piss them out in the process. You're essentially gonna losing some of these minerals, and you have a negative balance here over time, which is going to over time run you into problems. Another very important mineral when it comes to bone health in general, and probably also teeth health, is phosphorus. This is yet another thing. You get phosphorus from other raw animal products, essentially. Meat is very high in phosphorus simply. And the proper phosphorus calcium balance probably is what ideally restores bones and teeth inside of the body. And having these proper balances upheld for a long enough time. So that's basically tooth health in short. I can't really think of anything additional important here at the moment. Of course, again, the subject is a lot more complex than I illustrated here. There are a lot more minerals at play here, a lot more nutrients at play here. But essentially, If you're sticking to a natural human diet, you should not have a huge swing of blood sugar all the time permanently, and your body shouldn't have to balance out your own osmotic relationships via leaching calcium from your bones. Just as well as you should get a lot of calcium through your natural diet, okay? And, I want to bring this into context with Durianrider, who's a perfect example for that, He has no natural tooth in his mouth anymore at an age of 42. Do you really want to take advice from someone like that on how to take care of your teeth? I mean, we can debate whether flossing and brushing your teeth and, keeping your mouth hydrated and all that stuff is important. The fact is that primitive peoples don't really brush their teeth. They don't really take care of that stuff at all. It just works, it just works. They don't have to think about it. This is yet again another, example where we see how simple health can really be if you follow the natural laws for your, species. With that being said, I hope you got something from this. Bye.